What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Big Hoof Energy, episode 5. I'm your host, Ryan Anderson. As usual, I get to be joined by my co-hosts, Kaylie Shapiro and Jackson Muniz. How you guys doing today?
Doing good.
Good. How are you?
Doing well. Still trying to get over being sick as I was last week. We get to cover the late pick 5 at Aqueduct this Saturday. New York Stallion Series races going on, each worth $500,000. And this week we get to be joined by our friend and guest over from NYRABets, Matthew DeSantis. Matthew, how's it going?
It's going great. It's great to be back with you guys. Chatted with Jackson and Ryan before the Breeders' Cup, and always a lot of fun. And so glad to be able to connect this week and talk to you guys about a really fun sequence to close out the day on Saturday at Aqueduct.
Absolutely. Saw you out there in what is basically the coldest that San Diego gets at around 50 degrees or so, before the sun comes up. So it was fun seeing you out there. And then obviously, we've come a long way. Now we get to break down your circuit out at Aqueduct, the late pick 5. It was a challenging sequence. We got obviously the Stallion Series races for the 2-year-olds. We're kicking it off with the state bred maiden race for the 2-year-olds. So how'd you guys see the sequence?
Yeah, I think it was a challenging sequence in that I think you could play it a couple of different ways. If you're, depending on what your strategy is in terms of building a pick 5 ticket, I think it's a tough sequence to toss favorites, and that presents some issues because then but there's not an obvious single necessarily. I think all of us could end up maybe on a different single if you're trying to put together an economical ticket. So it was challenging in that regard. Where's the single? And then it's like, well, where am I fading a favorite or where am I fading a heavy favorite? And then if you're not fading a heavy favorite, then I don't want to go too deep in any of these legs. So, I think in that regard, it was challenging, but very competitive, I would say, across the board. And I think it presents opportunity for good kind of second and third choice horses, who might not be huge 10-1 value, but who are 9-2, 5-1, 6-1. I think those are the types of horses who could really make this ticket cash out pretty nicely on Saturday.
Absolutely. I agree. And to your point, there isn't a single that all of us used together. I think 3 of the 4 tickets have singles, and we all singled a different horse. So that says a lot about the complexity of this card. Starting off with, I'll throw race number 6 up on the screen here. We do have a coupled entry in here, so my apologies if I count to the wrong horse. But to start off the picks, me, Jackson, and Kaylie, we all saw the race with the number 7 on top. I saw the race 7-4, Jackson 7-8, and Kaylie 7-9. With Matthew going to the 8 on top here. The number 8 should be Miss Tiramisu.
Gabby's Legacy.
Oh, Gabby's Legacy.
0 for 1. Nice try.
Oh, no. All right. So already, I was already wrong. I counted wrong then on that because I meant Miss Tiramisu as my top.
Here we go.
Okay. Look at me.
Oh, this isn't good. We all have the same top pick.
Yeah. Go ahead and take us away, Matthew, with number 7, Miss Tiramisu first, our all group top consensus pick.
Yeah, I used to do a live stream with a group of guys, and I remember one week we all liked Law Professor. This is many years ago when he was out in California, and he was a big price, and he won that week, and we just joked that became our Law Professor lock of the week anytime all of us agreed on a horse. So maybe we have a new tradition here, Miss Tiramisu lock of the week, if this one is able to come through as our top selection. I think there's a lot to like here in terms of a horse that's coming out of a productive maiden race. And I say productive because it was an informative and educational effort. Obviously, faced a little bit of adversity coming out of the gate, getting bumped around. It wasn't an ideal trip in that regard. I tend to always give a lot of credit to horses that experience that early on in their career. And the more important part is the horse continued to run on and didn't give up. A lot of times you'll see a horse face adversity early on and then just kind of pack it in. Maybe it doesn't end up liking the way that the trip plays out, especially with young horses liking to be up in the lead. So the fact Miss Tiramisu showed the ability to sit mid-pack, pass horses, I thought was really promising, made up ground in that effort, exits with the second best buyer speed figure in the field. And so I thought obviously could make another step forward. I think Jorge Duarte Jr. is a very good trainer here. You have Dylan Davis up on the mount before he goes down to the championship meet at Gulfstream Park, and he has been lights out up here. And what I will say is one of the things that Dylan has done over the last couple of months that I think has really been that light switch moment for him is he's been more aggressive. And I also think he's been very, very good at spotting the tendencies of other jockeys and kind of really seeing how races are going to play out and knowing those tendencies and taking advantage of them. So I thought this one made a lot of sense coming back second time as a start.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. And I think everybody is more or less in lockstep with you, as we all ended up again with the law professor lock of the day to kick this thing off. Jackson, our show yesterday, we covered a race in which law professor did not win, and that was won by Dream Shake, one of the runners in the Turfway Park sequence this weekend out on the West Coast. But Kaylie, Jackson, did either of you have anything to add on Miss Tiramisu?
Yeah, I completely agree with everything Matthew said. She did have a really difficult start in her debut. She got bumped out of the gate. The number 10 there bumped into the number 9 that then bumped into her. So yeah, and then she was able to find a spot pretty comfortably. She showed the ability to pass horses and kind of handled that horse start like a professional. And she showed a decent amount of speed, I thought, too. She came really, really wide around the turn, and she didn't weaken whatsoever to secure third. So yeah, I think facing that much adversity on debut and handling it in that way, I think she should find her way to the winner's circle second time out. And again, as Matthew said, Jorge Duarte has really good stats second time out as well, better than first time out. So that was another reason I landed on this one.
Absolutely. Jackson?
Yeah, I mean, I know we covered that sequence a few weeks back, and we were talking about that race. And I know, Kaylie, as soon as the race ended, you said, that's the horse I want moving forward. I want Miss Tiramisu next time. So I'm not surprised that we're all picking her. She's drawn ideally. She's drawn toward the outside. Most of the speed's towards the inside. That race, it was a good race. You guys covered most of the bases. I think she's pretty logical in here. I'm not expecting to get a giant price, but I singled her in pick 5. I think she's a standout in here. So going to take a stand very early on.
Yeah, hopefully it's a vote of confidence that all 4 of us pick this one.
Absolutely.
On top. We'll go right to the outside, Jackson. We'll stick with you, Gabby's Legacy, the number 8.
Yeah, I thought she was a little interesting. I think she took some money on debut. Didn't really do any kind of running at all, but she got Dylan Davis to ride, which maybe that contributed to getting some play in that spot. And then she's not really bred for the turf either. It just seemed like it was kind of an educational run, just get a race into her. Now she's cutting back to 7 furlongs. I like the cutback moves, get into the dirt, which again she's bred for. And they paid $60,000 for her, so I don't think they think she's a slouch. So my big play is all Miss Tiramisu, but I wouldn't mind a 7-8 exacta as a bit of a backup ticket, I guess.
Absolutely. Those McKinseys have been running great ever since they've hit the track. So I like to see him get those dirt starts for sure, because I think he's better on there. We'll go now to the number 9 outside of Gabby's Legacy, to Truly Magic. Matthew and Kaylie, you both picked this horse in second. Kaylie, we'll go to you for the number 9 to touch on your second pick here.
She comes out of the same race as Miss Tiramisu, and you could argue she had just as difficult of a trip. I was nearly going to single Miss Tiramisu until I watched the replay and saw how this horse faced adversity as well. She was a part of that bumping line at the start of that race. She had a rough trip as well. She started moving later in the race than Miss Tiramisu and actually came even wider than Miss Tiramisu to finish 4th. And then obviously George Weaver with 2-year-olds and then second time starters has really good stats. So I landed on this horse as well. I think they honestly had just as difficult as a debut. And this horse was able to make up a lot of ground.
Absolutely. This one, Truly Magic, came out of a lot of trouble in that trip. And while Miss Tiramisu showed a lot of promise, Truly Magic definitely didn't disappoint at all. The horse I wound up in second, at least for me, was the number 4 Julita. Gonna be breaking from the 3-hole here. I know, Dave Duggan doesn't have the strongest percentage with first-time starters, only 9% out of the 22 sample size there. But I love the works coming in. 2 bullet works, first of 205 coming in on the Belmont track, and then 3 back, first of 139. Just shows me this horse is going to have some speed, going to have some ability, going to have some quickness. Obviously, Duggan doesn't typically have them ready to go first time out. So maybe this one is just showing a bunch of talent in the morning and might just kind of buck that trend. So I am a heavy lean on Miss Tiramisu for sure, but I wanted to throw Julita in there just because we don't quite know what she is. And she is a bit of a mystery in a race where a lot of common opponents are coming out of that Miss Tiramisu race. So I saw the race 7-4. Jackson saw the race 7-8. Kaylie saw the race 7-9, as did Matthew. 579. That's race number 6. Race number 7, the picks are up. We're going a mile, $25,000 non-winners of 2 lifetime. I picked the race 5-9. Jackson picked the race 11-6. Kaylie went with the coupled entry 1A with the 9, and then Matthew 5-10. We'll start with the number 5, who should be. Is it Brown Don't Stop? Should be Brown.
Well, 5 is Willing to Risk It All.
Oh, yes. Willing to Risk It All. Thank you. Oh, yes. I also picked this horse. I should probably have remembered that one. Willing to Risk It All. Our top pick, Matthew. Why don't you take it away here?
Yeah, one that is, coming out of a barn I really respect for Jose D'Angelo. First start for Jimmy Ferraro, off a little bit of a freshening. And really, the equipment change, I think, is what is something that is interesting to me. Obviously, going and switching to blinkers on now, as well as dropping in class. And the 2 efforts that this horse has run on the dirt recently were both, I thought, really solid and certainly good enough to potentially win this race pretty easily. So, and this horse had been competitive against higher level fields. And, granted, some of those were on the turf, but like I said, the speed figures generally translated to the dirt. And while those both were over sealed tracks and sloppy tracks, we are expecting dry conditions and dry fast conditions on Saturday. I still think this one with the blinkers on shows good speed. And that's really kind of where you want to be a lot of times, up on the front end with these 1-turn mile races. And I also think at this level too, and $25,000 claimers, the best way to win those races is just to get a horse out in front. And one of the things that Maddie Oliver did, I thought, very well last year when she rode up here in Aqueduct, she got her horses out up front. And you remember her kind of famously doing that with Super Chow. And Super Chow got a lot of wins up here because Maddie rode him so aggressively. So I'm hoping for a similar type of a trip, and just think this one really stands above some of the others in the field.
You on mute, Ryan?
Yep, it muted me for whatever reason. Sorry, my mic was having some issues. But
that's why you got to leave our pretty faces on. We can tell you right away.
I know. Sorry. So yeah, I saw it the same way, picking the number 5 on top. I showed the time form speed figure pace projections there a little bit ago, and it shows the 5 kind of out in front, almost lone speed. I saw it almost the same way. These low-level claiming races, sometimes just getting out in front is all that matters. So I am hoping for an aggressive ride as this one drops slightly down the class ladder to the 25 non-winners of 2 lifetime. Kaylie, we'll go to you next for one of your 2 top picks for the joint entry. We'll start with the number 1, the rail runner, Timaeus.
I think it's Timaeus, but yes, this horse hasn't run since June. He was claimed from Pletcher 2 back. Linda Rice claimed him, and then she moved him up to, obviously, Allowance Company at Belmont at Aqueduct in June, where he finished 6th, got a 65 buyer. And in that race, he had trouble at the start. He was bumped out of the gate. He sat 3rd the majority of the race until he came around the turn. He seemed to be traveling uncomfortably. After that, he was swapping his leads. He traveled the majority of the stretch on the wrong lead. And, I think after a little bit of a layoff, Linda's able to get them ready off of a layoff, and the horse's work patterns look pretty decent. Although, there's not overwhelming buyer figures here, I think this horse can still get the job done. And I particularly like the coupled entry, just both of those horses themselves. I thought both of them were pretty interesting for Linda Rice. The 1A as well, 6 Kings, who broke his maiden going a mile and a 16th at Churchill in maiden claiming 20. And then he faced not too horrible of a claiming field that day. He ran a 68 buyer to win. 2 out of the 8 horses that finished behind him broke their maiden after, and most of the horses improved their buyers. So I thought that was a positive. And then obviously next time out at Keeneland, he went a mile and a 16th and faced a decent field there as well. And then he broke at the back of the field that day and really had no pace to close into. So I think with a projected fast pace here, this horse might have the pace that he needs to close into here. So I like the coupled entry. I liked both of them. Not sure which one I prefer. Maybe the 1, but
absolutely, yeah. The coupled entry, I do like it from I don't really like it all that much, because sometimes in a situation like this where you made a really good case for both of the entrants, it's probably going to hamper, the price that you're going to be able to get on them. But I do think that they're both good runners. And this is that classic Linda move. First off the claim, kind of drops with the tag a little bit. Certainly going to be dangerous in this spot. Jackson, we'll go to you to the far outside for D-Day Sky.
Yeah, I thought this was a tough race. I thought it was pretty competitive, pretty wide open. And I think this is a horse that's going to be a decent price in here. So I wanted to give him a look off those two pretty iffy efforts coming lately. But you know what? He's drawn really well on the outside. Looks like there's a good amount of speed in here where he'll be able to get that, that clear stalking trip, trouble-free, just get into some kind of rhythm. And we'll see what he has left in the stretch. Wasn't that long ago. He's facing much better horses. This was just a couple months ago. And running okay, running figures that definitely fit in here. And last time he could make an excuse. It was sloppy track. Maybe he just didn't like it. Two back parks. Some horses just don't handle parks. So, he's getting in light. Again, he's going to be in the outside on the clear. And this is a tough race. So I'd be hesitant to take any short price in this field. So if he's like 8-1, 10-1, that seems about right to me.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that. And we saw the time form pace projections again and had the 11 kind of sit in that exact trip. Right there. I'll go now to our second choice for me, Kaylie, and Matthew. That's the number 9, Bold Ambition. I'll start with you, Matthew. You like this horse in second.
Yeah, Michelle Nevin off the claim from Linda, and you have Kendrick Carmouche up on the mount. And again, Kendrick, we talk about jockeys being aggressive. Kendrick's usually one who gets horses out there and places them pretty prominently early in a race. This horse has good speed. His first time gelding, I know that's an angle that someone like Maggie Wolfendale really likes to play a lot. And, it's not an angle that I always feel quite as comfortable with, just because, I'm not around the horses quite as much. And so Maggie usually sees them in the paddock, knows if this is a horse that sometimes acts up too much beforehand, kind of wears themselves out, runs their race before they get into the gate. Those types of issues, it's just maybe difficult to control. The gelding obviously can help facilitate this. And so I think, that's an angle to certainly consider. And then again, Kendrick up on the mount. And it's interesting. This horse, I think at a mile is actually quite good. You look at that race 2 back at 6.5 furlongs, I think it's just too short. They were probably going a little too fast there. And I think was just, also maybe a little bit of a higher level claimer. And that was the first race against winners as well. I'm usually willing to draw a line through those types of efforts. So I thought Bold Ambition for Michelle Nevin made a lot of sense with Kendrick up.
Absolutely. I saw it similarly, and I liked how the 3rd and 6th place finishers both came back to win their next out. The buyer figures seem to hold up relatively well. Most of them coming back to improve a little bit. One, Ice Road did come back to win, but regressed on the buyer a little bit in there. So I like Bold Ambition a little bit here. Michelle Nevin, the ultimate equipment change, as they call it, with the first time gelding. Kaylie, did you have anything to add here on the number 9, our collective second choice?
I agree with everything Matthew said. Best speed figures this horse has ran have been at a mile. Comes into this in good form, and I like that this horse has won Gates Wire and also is able to rate as well. And with Carmouche aboard, that he's going to be aggressive enough to either have this horse in the early mix or maybe even on the lead. So I like that this horse can win either way, and that his best figures were at a mile. So
absolutely, this 1-turn mile really seems to hit Bold Ambition between the eyes, and I think that's going to be the key to success for this one. Jackson, you picked the number 6 in second, which should be Brown Don't Stop for real this time.
We're getting there. Yeah, it feels like the horses that are most likely to take some money are the ones that mostly have speed. So I was trying to look for a horse that might be coming from off the pace. And I know his form recently, again, is not great, but those all came over sloppy tracks. He historically has not run well in the slop. So maybe getting back onto a faster track is really what he wants to do. Because those races in the spring, they really weren't bad. If you consider, he was an early 3-year-old running 65 figures. That's fine. If you factor in some improvement as in a December 3-year-old, he can make some noise from off the pace in here. Again, this was a tough race. I thought this was a price play, but give him a chance on a 10-1 shot or so, and to come from off the pace.
Go ahead, Matthew.
Yeah, I was just going to add one thing. This is a horse that, obviously, if you want to use in your horizontals, go for it. This is a horse I absolutely will include in my verticals for the reason that Katie Davis is jockeying. Katie Davis, anybody who watches New York knows she rides through the wire. There's no standing up. There's no second finish line. There's no concerns about where anything is. Katie gives hard rides. And I can't tell you the number of times I've cashed on a trifecta on a big time price because Katie really digs in and asks that horse for everything right up until the wire, whereas everybody else is easing up sometimes, and she's nabbed a bunch of minor awards. And so this is one who, like I said, like Jackson outlined, has some races to run back to that absolutely are good enough and have to run against far tougher. And like I said, will be dry fast conditions on Saturday.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great point because Katie Davis does always ride through the wire, and more times than not, especially up at the Saratoga Summer Meet. You see her flying late for third or flying late for second when the other ones have kind of, maybe let up a little bit. So that's a great point for anybody playing those horizontals. That is race number 7. I saw the race 5-9. Kaylee saw the race with the coupled entry and the 9. Jackson saw the race 11-6, and Matthew saw the race 5-9 as well. Moving on to race number 8, the first of 2 New York Stallion Series races here. Races up. We're going 7 furlongs. This one for obviously restricted 2-year-olds. Got to be sired by a New York Stallion. Let me throw our picks up. I saw the race 2-10. Jackson saw the race 7-10. Kaylee saw the race 7-3, and Matthew saw the race 2-5. Kaylee, we're going to start with you this time with the number 7. Oh man.
Man in finance.
Thank you. Man in finance.
Sorry, I don't know if you have my incorrect picks for this, but I went
boy.
I went I went 210.
210. Okay.
Yeah, Sacrosanct and soon to be
Sacrosanct,
King.
yes. That
I
one
can
might
talk
have
about it
been.
if we're ready.
Yeah, go ahead, Jackson.
Yeah.
We'll lead off with you now. Number 7, Man in Finance.
Yeah, this is a horse that kind of ran off the screen first time. I mean, that was a really impressive effort. Pace wasn't super fast, but he did it the right way, right? He was right up there, drew away from the field, won by open lengths, beat Kenny B, who came back to win by open lengths and run well in that stake race. And then last time, I think we talked about this race as well. And I picked him that day, and he took some money and didn't really run great. But I do remember before the race reading an article and Danny Gargan was quoted saying that they were just getting a prep into him. They didn't really care about the notebook. They wanted the prep for this race that has a much, much bigger purse. So I would fully expect him to run much better than he did last time. I think, again, he's drawn well on the outside. Most of the main speed is to his inside, and that's going to serve him really well, where he can get that similar trip he got 2 back, where he's just parked on the outside. All the speed's over there. He can just sit off of him, be in the clear, go by him in the stretch, because he has numbers that fit very nicely in here, and I think he's going to get the right kind of trip.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's Man in Finance, trained by Danny Gargan. Obviously beat Kenny B, who was a nice horse who repeated with a victory next time out, and then ran second in that stakes race you see behind a good Wesley Ward filly and Shoot It True. That is, I'll go now to number 2, where 3 of us ended up on Sacrosanct for the red hot Brad Cox barn. Matthew, I'll lead off with you now, Sacrosanct, and then Kaylee, go ahead afterward.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of, you already sold the angle, right? It's Brad Cox. I mean, quite frankly, sometimes you don't overthink these things, and it's hard to emphasize just how dominant he is in the winter up here at Aqueduct. And this is not just a new thing. He was this way the last couple of years up here. He's got Manny Franco up. Manny's the top rider for him, this time of year. And I just think that this horse, can sit a couple of different types, can rate a little bit. Obviously, will be toward the inside. To Jackson's point, could make it a little bit more complicated. Might have to send. Manny's got soft hands. He's got good timing. He's got a good sense of speed. I mean, Manny really is a very, very good jockey, I think, and maybe a little underrated from a national perspective. And so I think, he'll be able to judge that early pace scenario very well. I mean, the incredible thing is Cox has sent out 20 runners at Aqueduct to this point. Only 3 have missed the board. I mean, it's just incredible to see what he's winning, and everything's winning that he's sending out. So this is actually my single in this race, though I agree with Jackson that it's a very competitive race, but you got to find a single somewhere. And I'd rather go the single with a 40% trainer, pairing up with a jockey who wins over 30% of the time. So I just think that these two, are really dominant, undefeated, obviously. What she's been able to do on the track, or what he's been able to do, I should say, on the track, it kind of speaks for itself. That really dominant victory 2 back at going 7 furlongs, and then being able to stretch out last time, going that 1-turn mile, taking a lot of money, and still running really well against a horse like Moplex, who is a graded stakes winner.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Kaylee, go ahead.
Completely agree. Obviously, there's the Brad Cox angle. I also like how this horse ran his best race going this distance, 7 furlongs, and then stretched out to a mile. Now cutting back to 7 furlongs again. So he should be dead fit, cutting back to 7 furlongs as well. Perfect 3 for 3. Comes into this with some of the best buyers. And then the Moplex thing that you mentioned. And I thought that the race on September 22nd, where he ran his best race at this distance, he was able to set pretty quick fractions and then pulled away, winning by 12 lengths. He's done everything right this far. And obviously, Brad Cox has great stats. And then Honest Mischief does as well. With 2-year-olds sprinting on the dirt, 18% of them winning. They seem to get better as they gain more experience as well. So I also think that's another angle, as well as the honest mischief angle. So there's a lot to like about this horse. Honestly, if I had to pick a single, I'd probably land on him.
Yeah, without a doubt, this one just kind of stood out, and you both touched on it. The combo between Manny Franco and Brad Cox this winter is always phenomenal. This year is certainly no exception. Brad Cox 40%. It's hard to look elsewhere. There is some other speed in this race with the number 5 that could potentially press up, but at the end of the day, I think Sacrosanct might just be better than these. We'll go now to the number 10. That should
Very outside.
Oh yeah, Soon to Be King. Okay, I thought this was a 12-horse field for some reason. Yeah, Soon to Be King. Jackson, you, me, and Kaylee all picked this horse in second. Why don't you take it away here with the number 10?
Yeah, you kind of just mentioned it a second ago with, all the speed. I think there's a good amount of speed in here, but the key part is all the speed is the main contenders, right? We have the 2-horse Sacrosanct, Bold Fortune is the 5, and Man in Finance. I'd say on paper those are probably the 3 most likely winners. And if they all just hook up and go really fast, Soon to Be King is the best closer in the field. I think pretty comfortably. He's another one that's drawn well. I mean, draw doesn't really matter for him because he comes from way out of it, but he keeps improving with every start. If he gets any kind of setup, he can be running late. So that was kind of the play there for me.
Absolutely. I saw it pretty similarly, and also Weaver's second entrance. So you'd have to imagine the number 5 is going to be sending towards the lead, as that's where he does his best running style, and Soon to Be King would be there to pick up the pieces. Kaylee, did you have any other notes on the number 10 here?
Yeah, I completely agree. And then he also gets Javier Castellano aboard this time. So a little bit of a jockey change there. And I know that this horse hasn't been in the winner's circle since he broke his maiden, but I was able to find slight reasons in each of those races. And I thought that the last race he ran, the Notebook, was particularly good. He didn't break terribly, but he fell pretty far back, I think, to last. He took a ton of kickback. He was like covered in dirt at the end. He was the trailer the majority of the race, and then he rallied late, passing Man in Finance, who broke a little poorly out of the 1 hole that day, but he had an easier overall trip. So I like that the ground that this horse is able to make up late, as well as the fast pace that's expected. And then anytime George Weaver and Javier Castellano team up over the last 5 years at NYRA, 19% win, 54% in the money. So yeah, I like the jockey change, as well as the fact that this horse has a lot of late speed as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Castellano's had a sensational last couple of years here, especially up at the NYRA circuit. So I like this one to be picking up the pieces. We'll go now, Matthew, back to you for the number 5, Bold Fortune, a horse that's also expected to be up pressing the pace.
Yeah, and the other George Weaver horse in this one with Dylan up on the mount stays aboard. This horse, won the last 2 times out by over 17, or actually over 18 lengths combined, and has the best buyer speed figure in the field. Now, granted, ran the 6 furlongs up at Finger Lakes, so this is going to be a little bit of a class test. Obviously, did break its maiden at Belmont at the Big A meet 2 back. Then faced, quite frankly, probably slightly lesser competition than what he's going to be facing here up at Finger Lakes, stretching out an additional furlong. It's definitely a question mark. I just like a horse that just keeps improving from a buyer speed figure perspective. And I think that's something that's important. And the other thing I'll mention, and, Kaylee kind of touched on this point about Soon to Be King, hasn't found the winner's circle in a while. I just sometimes am hesitant with those types of horses. It's like, are they perpetually going to be kind of that second and third place, that sort of horse that you go back and all of us who watch replays go, man, that horse ran the best race. Can run the best race. They just don't win. And so it's just, that's kind of an issue when you're coming from off the pace, especially in sprints at Aqueduct. Through the winter meet to this point, only 15% of sprint winners have come from more than 3 lengths off the pace at the half-mile mark. That is where soon-to-be king is likely going to be at that point. So unless, Javi, which is possible, kind of gets this horse out maybe a little bit closer and sits more of a mid-pack trip, then I think maybe can rely on that sustained run coming late. But was willing to kind of assume this race might get one up on the front end. And, it wouldn't be NYRA if a bunch of jockeys also didn't take back, just bafflingly sometimes. So, it's one of those things. I joke with David Aragona about it sometimes with the time form pace projections. I go, you get your work cut out for you in New York, because on paper, everything looks a certain way. And then the gates open and you just go, how did this happen? How did this horse get up on the lead? Or how is there a speed duel all of a sudden in a race where there was no speed? So you never know how these things play out. And it'll be interesting, especially with these young horses, who wants to try to be a little bit more tactical in these spots and try to rate.
Absolutely. At least you have some good confidence that Dylan Davis is going to get this horse aggressively forward and in the right position. So he's not a guy I worry too much about, a mysterious take back on a pace horse or, try and do anything that the horse doesn't naturally want to do. So that's race number 8. I saw the race 2:10, as did Kaylie. Jackson saw the race 7:10. Matthew saw the race 2:5. We'll go now to the fillies version of this race. We're going 7 furlongs again, 2-year-olds restricted fillies for the second leg of the New York Stallion Series. I saw the race 12:7. Jackson saw the race 7:10. Kaylie saw the race 7:3. And Matthew saw the race 7:12. Again, a common horse that we're all seeing here is the number 7. Let me scroll down to it. That is Boston's Finest. Yes,
Yep.
Boston's Finest. Hey, I got it right this time. The number 7 horse here. Kaylie, why don't you lead us off with why Boston's Finest landed up as your top choice?
Sort of a similar angle as I took in the last race. This horse actually pretty much similar, 6 furlongs to a mile, now back to 7 furlongs, Chad Brown. So I immediately obviously looked at that. And then this is another Honest Mischief as well, that continue to get better at too, as we've seen with this first crop. As they continue to race, they get better. Last time out, this horse chased around with the Angels, who's a pretty talented filly, who's a perfect 4-for-4, and went on to win a couple races after that, or I think one after that. And then this horse was Boston's Finest, was able to finish second, only lost by about 3 lengths. Was no match for with the Angels, but I liked how she showed the ability to stay with the pace, and she didn't really weaken at all. She was just outrun. And then obviously Chad Brown has great stats with 2-year-olds in non-graded stakes at NYRA over the past 5 years. He's winning 35% of the time. So yeah, my eye immediately was drawn to this one, Boston's Finest.
Absolutely. Yeah, we all had this horse somewhere on our tickets. Matthew, did you have anything to add for the number 7, Boston's Finest?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of what Kaylie said, and goes back to an angle that I actually had in the previous race with the Weaver horse in terms of a young horse with ascending speed figures. And so I love those types of horses because I don't know where the ceiling is yet. So it could be this horse continues to take another step forward. And I like that you've really seen kind of a stepwise progression each time from this one. Manny aboard. Manny is a lot of people's number 1 jockey, but he's also Chad's number 1 jockey this time of year up there too. So, again, you're getting a really good, confident ride for a horse that faced very good competition last time out. Kaylie covered, the With the Angels angle. Very, very good horse for Linda Rice. So finishing second to that one, no concerns on my end. I think this one makes a lot of sense to include in your tickets.
Without a doubt. Jackson, anything to add as you also pick this horse?
Everything they said. And then just the last race, everyone that's come back to run has improved their figure by at least 7 points, some much higher than that, with the exception of With the Angels, who came back to repeat. And, she won a stake race from way off the pace. So that figure could arguably be higher. She's cutting back. She's got speed, but she doesn't need to lead. She'll be right behind it, and she can pass horses. So very logical in here. I'm not expecting a giant price, but she makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, absolutely. The note with the Angels also also played a part in my second pick here. That's the number 12 Stone Smuggler. I like this one coming out of a race where finished third to With the Angels that day in the Key Sense Stakes race. I think With the Angels was just that dominant 2-year-old this summer and into the early fall, but looks like the others are kind of catching up to With the Angels. Has each of her wins have kind of, the winning margin has gotten smaller and smaller with each race. So I like Stone Smuggler coming out. It's the same progression angle that Matthew and we've all touched on, out of an Honest Mischief, so similar to the angle that Kaylie had there. And I just think this one's going to get the best of the draw. Should set a nice clear trip for Jorge Abreu with jockey Jose Lezcano in the saddle today. Going 7 furlongs, I think the stretch out should really hit this one between the eyes and be right in the sweet spot for Stone Smuggler here. I love the Bustin' Stones, whether it's mares or just out of that sire. They just seem so game and they never want to get past. So I'm hoping, Bustin' Stones pass that down into Stone Smuggler here. And the 7 furlongs is just the perfect trip. And Lezcano has this one in the right place coming down the lane. Matthew, did you have anything to add on that as you picked this horse in second?
Yeah, the only thing I'll add to that is I really like the 2 5-furlong works leading up to this race, stretching the horse out. That's something I always like to see from 2-year-olds, is getting those 5-furlong works in and just continuing to build the foundation of a young horse when going to a longer distance. I remember a couple of years ago, one of the things I noted was how much I loved what they were doing with Mage before the Kentucky Derby. They were doing these 6-furlong workouts because they knew, hey, we got to build up this foundation for this horse and kind of get this horse used to running a little bit longer, really pushing this horse's fitness level. And so I love seeing that angle for young horses in particular. They don't need to be, overly fast works, but I just love to see that sort of endurance being built into them. So everything you mentioned as well draws the outside, which I like. And Abreu has had a very nice Aqueduct meet. We saw him get some nice wins with a horse like Scottish Lassie earlier this year.
Absolutely. And I like your point on the 5 furlong works coming in. It's like if, any one of us were going to go run a cross country meet, we're not going to warm up by doing 100-meter sprints. You're going to want to run a little bit farther than that and get that stamina into you. So I like it for the number 12 Stone Smuggler. Jackson, we'll go with you with the number 10 Princess Mischief, another Honest Mischief filly running here. You might be muted, sir.
I won't repeat what I just said, but I think, again, there's big field, bunch of 2-year-olds. The pace should be pretty honest in here. I feel like it kind of has to be just by oh my god, given the size of this field. And if they go pretty fast, this is the one I want coming for off the pace. Matthew just talked about the progression. This horse has progressed in every single race she's ran, so I don't see why she can't continue to do that. Castellano, we were talking about it. He's very, very good, especially this time of year. If this thing falls apart, I want a piece of her because she has that giant leg kick. And last time was pretty impressive last time, winning by over 5 lengths.
Absolutely. Winning by 5 lengths in the slot, coming from so far out of it. That's normally pretty tough to do on those sealed Aqueduct tracks. Normally it's playing pretty forward. So certainly an impressive run from her last time. And you mentioned the progression angle where I don't think we've seen the best of that filly quite yet. Kaylie, I'll go to you. Another horse that is progressing from start over start, the number 3 Mischief Lady. Sorry.
Yeah, so I was trying to find a horse to include that, maybe you could get a little bit of a price on. I'm not sure exactly what that's going to be, but I thought this was an option. Obviously, this horse started on turf. She didn't take to it much. And then she ran in the Lady Finger Stakes at Finger Lakes. And 3 out of the 5 horses that she faced there went into the race as winners. So I thought that was another a good point, was that she faced winners before she even broke her maiden. And then I think her last start, her maiden breaking race, was pretty impressive. She broke pretty sharply, and she faced some serious pace pressure from the horse that finished second to her, Usha. And that horse, Usha, interestingly enough, she has not run back yet. So I was looking at, her past performances and found that she had ran 2 thirds in maiden special weight races at Del Mar, one of which was won by Tenma. So obviously a multiple graded stakes winner. And the other one was won by Non-Compliant, who's a grade 2 winner. And then her debut prior to that, she finished ahead of Thought Process, who's a grade 3 winner. So I thought those were all pretty interesting points. And obviously our buyer speed figures are improving. So figured I'd take a shot with this one, especially the works look pretty good as well. Specifically the last work on the 8th, working 5th out of 205 horses. She worked in 48 flat. So yeah, I thought this one was pretty interesting.
Absolutely. And while you were explaining your thought process on that one, I went through the time, form, pace projections, and it showed that they have the 3 finishing in first at the finish line there. So hopefully for your sake, that's right. But for race number 9, the second leg, the Phillies leg of the New York Stallion Series, I picked the race 12-7. Jackson picked the race 7-10. Kaylie 7-3, and Matthew 7-12. We'll go on to race number 10, where most of us are in lockstep. Jackson's the one that didn't pick the 1 and the 3, as I picked the race 3-1, as did Kaylie. Matthew picked the race 1-3. Jackson picked the race 1-10. Jackson, we're going to start with you. You're the one that picked the number 10, should be Taparino, as your second choice in this one, but why don't you take it away? Oh, you're muted again.
I'm trying to be polite. I keep screwing it up. With my second choice, you want me to start with that?
Yeah.
Okay, so Taparino, this is a tough race. I mean, we have so many career maidens in here that just kind of want to run in place. It's kind of the same angle like you've been using the last few races, where my top pick is a speed horse, and the second choice is going to be one coming from pretty far out of it. So he's kind of been up against it in terms of race flow in each of his last 3 starts, but he always kind of comes running with his, his late plodding along, grinding. Maybe today's the day. Maybe today's the day where they do go too fast up front and they kind of come back to him, and he just picks up the pieces and can kind of go by late in the lane. That was kind of my angle here. I don't love the pick. Again, if I'm playing the pick 4s or pick 5s, I'd be probably pretty spready in here, unless I'm going to just be really aggressive and single. It's one of those races I think you're singling and hoping for the best, or you're taking as many as you can afford to.
Absolutely, yeah. We'll go now to the rail horse. That is Salicious, trained by Oscar Barrera. Yeah, we're going 1 mile and an eighth, lowest level, maiden $20,000 claimers. Matthew, you picked this horse on top, and as did Jackson. What did you like about this runner?
Yeah, listen, this is a very spready race. I agree with Jackson. I mean, you got to love it when you close out a card with a $20,000 maiden claimer going 9 furlongs. And there's a lot of like over 12, over 16, over 18, over, it's just, part of me wanted to pick the Wayne Potts horse that was 0 for 4 just because it was the horse that lost the least amount of times. And I go, well, at least maybe there's something there. But no, with Salacious, what gives me confidence was what the horse did last time out at this level, basically, going 1 mile and an eighth against maiden claiming 20 and running second and just kind of losing at the very end at Hours in a Day, who came back to win next time out. So that was, I thought, a really positive thing to see. And this horse has largely been running against tougher company. Really just, yes, you see the 0 for 12, a lot of maiden special weight races, though, in there. And the 2 times this horse kind of ran for a maiden 20 tag, largely ran okay. And again, I think longer is better with this one. So I think this horse from the rail, Eric Cancel doesn't have to overthink this one. Get this horse out up front. Just let this horse either get up on the lead or sit a pocket trip. But I think this one is going to be in kind of prime position turning for home. So I thought this one just made a lot of sense. And again, are we going to get a lot of money on this one? Probably not. I'd imagine this will be one of your top choices on the morning line, but made a lot of sense for me.
I agree. I saw it very similarly, picking this horse in second. Hours in a Day, you mentioned, came back to win the next race that he ran, and also got an 82 buyer speed figure for it. So that's a substantial jump up. 4th place finisher out of that last maiden 20 race, also came back to win his next out. Kaylie or Jackson, did you have anything to add on the number 1, Salicious?
Nah, you guys covered all my notes. We're good.
Yeah, I completely agree. Obviously love that the last start was at this distance on the surface, and the speed figures, the speed figure coming into this is good enough to win when you judge the recent form of the other runners as well.
Also,
Absolutely.
there's a very important angle, which is the horse's second start. He failed to menace, which is somebody's Twitter handle here. So, that is usually a dead giveaway. And I also have to thank everybody on Twitter who tags me whenever they see that running on in there on a horse. They're like, oh, Matthew, you must be going all in on the 8 today. And I'm like, no, I'm not going all in on the 8 today usually. So luckily there's enough starts between that and today that I feel okay with this one.
There you go. That's pretty funny. Kaylie, we will stick with you here for our top pick, the number 3, very satisfactory out of the red hot Brad Cox barn as well.
Obviously, so you led with, part of my reasoning out of the Brad Cox barn. He has good numbers. First start off the claim as well. Manny stays aboard this time. And then this horse ran his co-highest speed figure, going 1.125 miles. It was on the turf, but obviously can handle routing, as you can see in the past performances. And then last time out was on the dirt. Just going a mile in the slop. I'd imagine getting on a track that isn't sloppy, maybe he'll be able to take a step up here. And then I thought that obviously his last start, he ran a pretty decent race. He had a difficult time working out a trip. He came 9 wide into the stretch and was able to make up a lot of ground and get up for third on a sloppy track. So I viewed that as a positive.
Absolutely. I saw it pretty similar to you there. Comanche Peak also running in Saturday's 7th race that we covered today. I believe he's the 10 horse in there, but I saw it very similar to you. That 9 wide last time out, that's just maybe a little too wide. You got to hope that this one's going to save a little ground. Gets the stretcher on 2 turns on dirt for the first time, so I like that off that running line last time out. So it should certainly handle the distance, and you can't ignore anything from the Brad Cox barn right now. Matthew, did you have anything to add as you picked this horse in second?
No, you guys covered it all.
That is race number 10. Most of us pretty much in lockstep. I picked the race 3-1. Jackson picked the race 1-10. Kaylie picked the race 3-1. And Matthew picked the race 1-3. Those are the late 5 in the sequence. And I've thrown the pick 5 tickets up for everybody. I know it's a lot of numbers going on right now. So we'll do our best to break it down for everybody. Matthew, why don't you kick us off here, taking us through your $36 ticket?
I'm going to kick it off by making an edit in the first race because I screwed up because of the so I'm much like you in that one. I'm 479 in that race. I like Julita as well. And so that's the one that I went with in that leg. And then I went with the coupled entry, the 5 and the 10 in race 7. I singled Sacrosanct for Brad Cox in race number 8. I went 2 deep in race 9. I went 7-12. And then in race 10, the last one we just talked about, I went 1, 3, 5, 7. And as Jackson pointed out, got a spread in that last race a lot. So it just figured $36. It was one of those where I looked at kind of where I was with my ticket. I said, okay, how deep can I go in this last leg and still keep it reasonable, basically? And felt like, well, 4 is not too bad, and a $36 ticket is pretty affordable. So decided to go with that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I like it a lot. $36 ticket. We normally have a budget on our late pick 5 that we, keep it under, we say like $100. And today we all kept it at a very reasonable price because I don't
Jackson's gonna repeat bet 15 times if we keep it under 100.
He better. Yeah. Jackson, you're going next. You got to take us through your very, complex $6 pick 5 ticket.
It's going to be a tough one. So you guys hang in there. Miss Timothy is going to be the single. We all like her. We covered all the bases on her. She's a strong finish there for me. That second leg, 1, 6, 11. Those are my top picks. Honestly, I'm probably going to, like you said, I'm going to do this a number of times, and I'll come back spready in race 7 because I don't feel great about race 7, and very spready in the last race. So I'm going to hope that 7th race is enough. And then in the 2 New York bred races, I feel pretty good about my horses. I feel like I have the best of speed and the best of closer in each of those 2. And then on the skinny ticket, just going to try to get home with that inside horse. Hope that's enough because if you're going to single anyone there, I feel like it's him. He just has a lot going for him with the draw and the speed in the last race. So we're going to hit this a bunch of times or not at all. We're going to see.
Hey, I don't disagree. And for $6 as your base investment, you certainly can't go wrong there. Kaylie, why don't you take us through your pick 5 ticket next?
For the first leg, I included the 2 horses that we talked about, Miss Tiramisu and Truly Magic. And then I also threw in the number 4. I had a few reasons why I didn't put that horse in my top 2, just under the Dam's produce record that were few red flags, but I thought that the works were too good to ignore. So I included this horse on my ticket. And then in the second leg, I used the 2 horses that we discussed already. And then in the third leg, I used the 2, 5, and the 10. So that's the 2 horses I talked about. Oh, and then I threw in Bold Fortune as well for George Weaver. That I think were one of your top picks or something. But yeah, I didn't feel comfortable leaving that horse off my ticket. And then in the next leg for the fillies, I did just the 2 horses that we talked about, the 7 and the 3. I thought that, one of them was probably a pretty clear winner, I hope, with Boston's Finest for Chad Brown. And then I tried to include a horse that I thought, could take a step up here and maybe get a little bit better of a price than the Chad Brown horse. And then in the last leg, I just used the 2 horses that we talked about, the 3 and the 1 for
Absolutely.
a 36. I think it's $36 total.
Yes, I like it. That is Kaylie's ticket there. We all kind of went with the 1-3 with the exception of Matthew, who spread a little deeper. And it might turn out that, Matthew, you are the smartest of us, as that race is just throwing a dart at a dartboard with trying to guess who's going to win in a field of career maidens. Feels like one of those races where a horse is going to win by 7-8 lengths, and it's just to be the only one that fires on that day. And whatever number that is, hopefully it's the 1, because then we all have it and we all end the day happy. My pick 5 ticket, I'm starting with the 4, 7, 9. Again, pretty much the logicals. Miss Tiramisu is pretty much the heaviest lean for me in there, but I do like the 4 and the 9. Next race, I'm going the 5, 9, and the 11. The 11, Jackson's top pick, and then the 5 and the 9 are horses that I had in there as well. I just think that they're in with a good shot. As we get into the Stallion Series, I'm going to go 2, 5, 10. So I do want to use Sacrosanct and Bold Fortune as my 2 top picks, as they're going to be forward. I also wanted to throw in the 10, the other George Weaver, coming from off the pace if that one really melts down, going 7 furlongs. In the fillies version of the New York Stallion Series, I'm going to be using the 12. That's the filly out of the Bustin' Stones mare. I'm just hoping that she gets a little game up front with Jose Lozcano giving her the right trip, and I'm hoping for a bit of a price, maybe again that second, third choice level between 3 to 1, 9 to 2. I feel like that might be pretty fair and add a little bit of value because the last race, I'm not getting super creative. I'm going with the 1 and the 3. Feels like it's got to be either the runner out of the Brad Cox barn or the rail horse Delicious to finally break their maiden. So those are our 4 pick 5 tickets. Mine was $27. Matthew and Kaylee at $36, and Jackson at a nice budget friendly $6. So you can go ahead and play that up about 30 times or however many times you want to play that one. This is a fun. Yeah, go ahead.
No, yeah, I'll play this one. I'm very excited to see what the cross country pick 5 is going to look like on Saturday, because I'm sure the stakes races will be involved, and I think they're going to use Oaklawn as well. So, and again, my strongest opinions are those 2 stakes. So if we can play that one as well, that'd be fun.
They are. I can actually tell you guys what the cross country is going to be on Saturday.
Please.
Insider info. I like it.
So the cross country is going to be Aqueduct race 8, followed by Oaklawn race 5, Aqueduct race 9, Oaklawn race 6, and Aqueduct race 10. So 8, 9, 10 at Aqueduct, 5, 6 at Oaklawn.
We get the old 9 furlong maiden 20 to close it out. I like it. It's going to be a great way to play that sequence. Those cross country pick 5s are always so much fun to participate in, just because you beat one favorite and that thing is going to pay. Jackson shortly. So it's a lot of fun. But this was a fun show. This is a good late pick 5 sequence at Aqueduct this weekend. We had a lot of common top picks. I'm curious to see. We'll know pretty early in this sequence if the number 7 Miss Tiramisu romps by 4 or 5. We'll know that we're in for a good day, and if not, we'll look other ways. But thank you everybody for tuning in. This was a lot of fun. Again, our pick 5 tickets still up on the screen there. Obviously, I'm your host Ryan with Jackson and Kaylee, who get to join me every week to cover a NYRA sequence. And Matthew, can't thank you enough for joining us this week because we weren't able to for Cigar Mile Day. And before we wrap it up here, what were your thoughts on how Cigar Mile Day went with the Cigar Mile, obviously, and the Remsen and Demoiselle?
Yeah, it was a great day. First of all, I was just happy it wasn't a sloppy sealed track as it wants to be sometimes on Cigar Mile Day. So I was happy for the conditions. And what a performance by Locked. I thought it was really a kind of just a reminder. You know, sometimes horses go away and we forget about them, and then the flavor of the week shows up and we get very excited about those horses. And then a horse like Locke shows up and goes, oh, right, This was the horse that won the Breeders' Futurity and was like ran a really good Breeders' Juvenile and was going to be one of the top choices in the Fountain of Youth before he scratched. And he just continues to impress. And again, a gun runner that they were so precocious early on that I think people forget Gun Runner himself was a great older horse. And these gun runners, if they run, so many of them have already become stallions, but if they let them out on the track, they're only going to get better with time. And this one has filled out beautifully for Todd Pletcher. So I'm really excited about him. And post time, talk about a horse that just cashes checks. I mean, he's the new Midnight Bourbon. He just, he hits the board every time. And, 15 for 15 in the money in his career. That's just absolutely incredible to be able to do that. So, and Mulligan ran a huge race. So it was a lot of fun. We'll see if Poster and that group can live up to Sierra Leone and Dornoch. I don't think so. So we'll see about that. But I think Brad Cox has got a very serious filly in Muhina who won the Demoiselle. And, man, Cox has that horse, good cheer, and immersive. And he's got 3 different jockeys on him. So Manny, Louis, and Flo have already kind of staked out their territory for who's going to be their Oaks horse. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I love talking about these sorts of things. So really appreciate you guys having me on. This was a lot of fun to talk about this sequence, and always love talking horses with y'all.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Matthew. As always, thank you to Kaylie and Jackson for joining me as we went through this late pick 5 sequence this Saturday at Aqueduct. We'll be back next week to cover another late sequence at the wonderful Big A as we continue racing there throughout the winter. So thank you, everybody, for joining. Until next time, I'm Ryan.